pleased to welcome Professor Hao-Wen Phuong Mei, who has recently written a book on intercultural communication, an interdisciplinary approach where neurons, genes, and evolution join the discourse.
Up until now in our course, we have discussed identity, and from there we will discuss multiculturalism. But can you help our students understand what diversity is and how it affects our lives in a multicultural environment?
Hello everyone. Well, diversity is basically the source of life and continuity. So let's compare humans and animals. It takes an animal hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, to develop mutants in the DNA and to adapt to the surrounding environment to survive. For example, to grow a gill or a wing. In humans, we don't. Instead of waiting to evolve a pair of wings to fly, we evolve ideas. In human history, the ability to select ideas from all available conscious, to exchange ideas, and to pass them down to the next generation is the reason why we have survived until today.
Wow, interesting. I've never thought of this that way.
And not only survived, we are the only species that populate all corners of the planet. We don't have wings, but while we can exploit the diversity of ideas, and we build airplane and we fly to the moon. The diversity of ideas is basically the diversity of cultures. The more diverse a culture is, the more ideas we can collect, we can select, and build upon. Our world has always been multicultural from the very beginning. It was just at a different scale. Nowadays, every street, every city, or even a classroom or family can be a mini multicultural environment.
Is cultural diversity, in your opinion, an advantage or a disadvantage?
Cultural diversity can be both advantageous and disadvantageous, depending on how good we are in dealing with the dynamics, that is, the nature of cultural diversity. In a very simple way, diversity is challenging when, number one, the resource is limited. Number two, at the very beginning, when different groups still need to get to know each other. And number three, when we have no common goals among each other.
Why are we so different from each other and yet so similar?
Well, we are similar to each other because we are basically one species. Human beings is such a young species that genetically we are almost entirely the same race. If we strictly look at it from biological point of view, it does not exist. We are so similar to each other in terms of culture as well. Why? Because biologically speaking, the capacity to select ideas and to pass on ideas is culture. And we are all capable of doing that. The foundation of culture is the same for all of us. We all need fundamental values to build a sustainable society, such as love, loyalty, hierarchy, a certain level of freedom, education, law, religion, etc. What differs among us is the degree of importance that we put on a certain value or a certain practice. For example, family is very important everywhere. It's just more here and less there. One unfortunate pitfall that we often have when talking about culture is that we speak as if we have opposite values, that you love families and then me don't. That's not right. No single human being can exist without family or extended family. So we all need social life to survive. And the correct way is some cultures are more family oriented and some cultures are less family oriented. We are the same in kind and different in level. And that is why we are both the same and different from each other.
Do you have other examples of values that differ in importance in different cultures?
What has brain research taught us about how we adapt to fit in with different cultures?
Not so long time ago, we thought that the brain is fixed, that we were born with a certain brain structure and it will stay that way. Well, it is wrong. Brain plasticity means that it functions like a muscle. the brain physically changes itself, with a certain part of the brain growing bigger or reduced in size as a result of our lifestyle, such as playing music, meditation, or working with numbers. It has been proven that the brain changes its pattern if we change our thinking. For example, if I think in a selfish way and if I think in a group-oriented way, my brain patterns will change accordingly. Now, this means human beings are built to adapt. Our brain is an incredible tool that is ready at work to help us adjust to any culture that we need to be part of.
Try to remember when you were last abroad. Did you manage to adapt to the country you were visiting? And if so, how?
Can you please explain the diagram of diversity pathways?
Now, this is a very brief explanation of the diagram of diversity pathway. I would suggest that you read my keynote text for a better understanding. But basically, the diagram is based on two main points. Number one, when our ancestors migrated to some parts of the world, the environment was dangerous and posed risks for diseases. So in order to survive, the best value was to stick to each other and to obey the leaders. People who had the genes that support these values had a better chance to leave behind children. And these children continue to bear new generations with more or less the same genes, which in turn reinforced the value of collectivism and obedience to the authority. So, the first point is problems in the environment triggered a cooperation between genes and cultural values. However, are we stuck with the values of our cultures? The answer is no, we are not, fortunately. Even when we have the genes that support these values, we can break free. Why? Because the brain is there to help us change everything. This is the second point. So in short, our everyday practices and behaviors can change three things. Number one, repeated action can change our own values. Number two, repeated actions can change our genes, or more precisely, how our genes express themselves. Number three, repeated actions can change the society around us. So I'm going to go to each point. Number one, repeated actions can change our own values. What is that? By doing the same things over and over again, we slowly internalize the purpose of our action and have it ingrained in our value system. For example, you may hate your neighbors. But if you keep talking to this person, helping this person, and showing them that you care, you may end up really liking them. And I mean it genuinely.
That reminds me of an expression, fake it until you make it.
The second point, repeated action can change how our genes express themselves. This is the field of epigenetics. So basically, our genes are fixed, but the proteins that sit atop of our genes are actually the bosses. They can turn on and off a gene. For example, you may inherit a genes of heart disease from your family, but if you live a healthy life, you can switch off those genes and making them go to sleep, so to speak. The reason why identical twins have the same genes, yet they can have very different personalities and even physical traits, is because genes can be modified by the choice that we make every day. Now, this is point three. Repeated actions can change the society around us. This is a very important point. The main idea in the field of intercultural communication is all about adapting and changing ourselves to a new culture. I disagree. We are not only the product of culture, but we are also the producer of our culture. If we keep adapting, we may adapt to bad, unethical practices as well. Again, as we said from the very beginning, humans select ideas to pass on, and to build upon. It's very important that we know we have the authorship of our culture as well. We are not just hopeless products that's ready to change and to fit in a culture. So, as Mahatma Gandhi once said, we need to be the change that we want to see.
I notice that the context includes all the elements in the chart: the environment, the brain, genes, behavior, and culture. What does it mean?
Context is the unique mixture of all interactions among 5 factors that you just mentioned: the environment, the brain, genes, behavior, and culture. The dynamic of these elements leads to the immense diversity that we see in our everyday life, the verb, gene, and neuron. All 5 factors relate to each other in such an intricate way that it is impossible to decide where the interaction starts or ends. Each factor is constantly changing itself as well. In other words, the term plasticity can be applied to all of them. Due to this complexity, any cultural analysis should take into account a particular context in which an event occurs. The force of environment, genes, brain, culture, and behavior varies and communicates with each other very differently in each circumstance, creating a unique cocktail, so to speak. So, for example, when we move to live in a new country, many factors combined decide the level of our integration. In what way the new geography influences our thinking and action, to what extent our genes may support or suppress a certain behavior. How flexible is our brain in helping us to cope with the new way of living? Are we bringing elements of our own cultures into the new country and changing it? Or are we losing our culture and assimilate? Do we keep the old behaviors and practices, or are we adopting new ones, etc.? So as you can see, these factors are very dynamic and their interaction is unique in every individual. That is why context is extremely important. Different contexts lead to different behaviors. Hofstede, a very prominent theorist in our discipline, famously said that culture is the software of the mind. However, with this insight from neuroscience, we can challenge this assumption and propose that not culture, but context is the software of the mind.
Do you have other examples of how the context of another culture can change someone's behavior?